At the end of the Mesozoic, the universe set forth on a distant, yet familiar, evolutionary path. The Earth entered its most recent geological era, the Cenozoic. The creative process had locked on the evolutionary line that would lead to life's highest organic expression, the human form. This is Session 10, Reflection, in a course titled Evolution of Consciousness, and that is central to a larger view, Evolution of Consciousness Theory. In this session, our journey carries us through the human line, to a point in evolution about 100,000 years ago, to the fundamental moment in the universe's becoming, that sets humanity apart from earlier human forms, the threshold to reflection. At the beginning of the Cenozoic, several groups dominated the mammalian class. The various species that made up these groups consisted of relatively small creatures, few that exceeded the size of the modern bear. All were four-footed, and most had muzzles, slim heads, and 5 toes on each foot. By about 54 million years ago, the evolutionary ancestors of the horse, camel, rodent, and rhinoceros had emerged, as had the first aquatic mammals, ancestors of the modern whale. By about 38 million years ago, true carnivores had appeared, animals that resembled modern dogs and cats. By about 26 million years ago, various grazing species had evolved, as had their predators. By about 12 million years ago, modern versions of many well-known animals inhabited the Earth. These included the elephant, mammoth, and mastodon, the latter two now extinct. Wolves had also emerged, as had the fox, puma, skunk, buffalo, antelope, and the now vanished saber-toothed tiger. The mammalian class also included the primates. About 50 million years ago, the primate line branched into prosimians and anthropoids. The prosimians changed little over time, and became the modern loris, lemur, and tarsier. About 38 million years ago, the anthropoid line branched. One shoot gave rise to the New World monkey. The other gave rise to the Old World monkey, gibbon, orangutan, and to a number of early ape-like lines, one of which forked. One branch of this fork led to the modern ape. By about 5 million years ago, the other led to creatures with primitive human characteristics. Anthropologists classify the earliest of these creatures in the now extinct genus, Australopithecus, as opposed to the genus Homo, to which we belong. Fossil remains of Australopithecus have been found in a number of sites in eastern and southern Africa, that continent the apparent limit of the animal's range. Australopithecus stood and walked upright, and had a brain a little larger than that of a modern chimpanzee. It also had a sloping forehead, a bony ridge above the eyes, and no discernible chin. By about 2.6 million years ago, a number of Australopithecine species lived, or had lived, on the African savanna. These included Australopithecus ramidus, boisé, robustus, afarensis, and africanus. Before we continue our look at humankind's ascent, we need to tighten our focus and probe the nature of the organisms that define that ascent. Anthropologists study human evolution in a number of ways, two of which are most applicable to the discussion at hand. First, they analyze the anatomical characteristics observed in whatever fossil remains can be found. Second, they analyze the archaeological relics created as a result of whatever activities a species may have been engaged. Of anatomical attributes, none are more important than those visible in the fossilized remains of the skull. More advanced species possess a more refined nervous system. Anatomically, this translates into a larger brain, with respect to the animal's height and weight. Anthropologists estimate brain size by measuring the volume, or cranial capacity, of the skull. The modern chimpanzee has an average cranial capacity of about 383 cubic centimeters, or 23.4 cubic inches. Australopithecus africanus had an average cranial capacity of about 450 cubic centimeters, or 27.5 cubic inches. The modern adult human being has an average cranial capacity of about 1330 cubic centimeters or 81.2 cubic inches. Of archaeological relics, the most important left by our early ancestors were tools. The earliest tools to be substantially fabricated may have been made from wood or bone, but the oldest to survive to the present have been made from stone. The simplest of these implements is called a chopper. The earliest choppers date to at least 2 million years ago, and were made by striking a rounded cobble with or against another rock to knock off one or more flakes. Though crude, the edge left on the original stone was sharp enough to cut meat, scrape hides, or sharpen a stick. Anatomical evolution and archaeological relics map an evolution of consciousness, manifest in a growing power to think and learn abstractly. In the previous session, we described abstract learning as a refinement of an organism's internal model of its world, and abstract thought as the creative activity that brings about this refinement. With each creative cycle, abstract and sensory perceptions align. With each creative threshold, the organism rises to a higher level of internalization, to a state of comprehension. This brings us to an observation that, as we will see in a moment, has the most staggering of implications. Like emptiness, fulfillment, or any state of awareness, a state of comprehension exists above nervous system structure of perception as organism consciousness. As abstract thought and learning refined, top-level organism consciousness grew increasingly distinct from nervous system structure of perception. There emerged a growing separation between the organic and top-level consciousness, a growing dichotomy of consciousness. By about 2 million years ago, Australopithecus had vanished, replaced by Homo habilis. Homo habilis looked much like an Australopithecus africanus, but had slightly more refined facial characteristics and a larger cranial capacity, on the average 666 cubic centimeters or 40.6 cubic inches. Archaeologists believe that Homo habilis made the first stone choppers, and at some point during the 300,000 years of its evolutionary reign, learned to fashion a more sophisticated tool, called a biface. Unlike a chopper, whose cutting edge is flaked on only one side, a biface is made by flaking adjacent sides, to create a sharper and straighter edge. By about 1.7 million years ago, Homo habilis had disappeared, to be replaced by a creature still closer to ourselves, Homo erectus. Homo erectus had a smaller jaw, a higher forehead, and a less distinct ridge above the eyes. Its cranial capacity measured about 950 cubic centimeters, or 58 cubic inches. In addition to choppers and bifaces, the Homo erectus toolkit included stone awls, anvils, cleavers, scrapers, and hand axes. Homo erectus hunted big game, and killed animals as intimidating as the now extinct cave bear, larger than the modern Kodiak. The species also cooked its food, for it had learned to harness fire. A hunting way of life and a meat-dominated diet made it possible for Homo erectus to migrate out of Africa and occupy regions of Asia and Europe. Between 300 and 500,000 years ago, Homo erectus gave rise to what, from an anatomical standpoint, we can describe as various archaic forms of our own species, Homo sapiens. The best known of our archaic forms is Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, or Neanderthal. Anatomically, Neanderthal was as tall as we are, but more robustly built, with a receding chin and a heavy brow ridge. Neanderthal had a cranial capacity of about 1,500 cubic centimeters, or 91.5 cubic inches, distinctly larger than that of a modern human being. There is a great deal of controversy as to how to classify Neanderthal and other early Homo sapien forms. We will leave the task of tracing our early sapiens lineage to the anthropologist, and lump all early Homo sapiens under the heading of archaic. The 4 billion years of biological evolution embodied in the archaic nervous system, and its almost unimaginably complex structure of perception, made possible the development that, about 100,000 years ago, draws an unmistakable line between humanity and earlier human forms. The archaic psyche contained the potential transformation that would propel the universe beyond its age of life and into its next major evolutionary era, understanding. From the standpoint of the organism, top-level organism consciousness no longer manifested through the alignment of sensory and abstract impressions to create a state of comprehension. Top-level organism consciousness manifested through the alignment of states of comprehension to create a higher level of awareness. Our level of abstract thought and learning had become enwrapped within a level of awareness that existed beyond nervous system structure of perception, a level of consciousness that existed disassociated from the organic level of our being. This separation between top-level consciousness and that of our abstract and lower levels created the most profound effect. We had become a creature that was conscious of itself, as if it existed removed from itself. We had become a being that was self-aware, conscious of its own consciousness. No longer did we merely think, we pondered our ability to think. No longer did we merely learn, we contemplated our ability to learn. Through the dichotomy in the human psyche, through our ability to internalize the nature of our existence, the consciousness that was creation stood face to face with itself. The universe crossed the threshold to reflection. To converse with ourselves, must not there be a separation within ourselves? Is not the human being different from other life? Is not the human being a threshold removed from the pre-reflective? With our look at the threshold to reflection, we complete session 10 in our course titled Evolution of Consciousness. We have the background to set forth into the era of evolutionary advance that the human ability to think and learn reflectively made possible the universe's age of understanding. Our course titled Evolution of Consciousness continues in session 11, Human Creativity.